Okay, so this is a Land Rover Discovery 2, year model 2003. Uh, this is the window sliding mechanism, and I'm going to try to hold it steady here and show you sort of how it works. Um, this this nylon wheel here is the original, and this one was broken off. The window frame, if I can hold this steady, this is when you need a bench to work on, but the window frame actually connects to this horizontal piece here, the bottom of the window. So what this is, I saw on one of the Land Rover forums where you could get these 1 inch by 1 inch furniture sliders. The brand that I originally looked for was not available. This is exactly a 1 inch by 1 inch square, and what I did to reinforce it, that I think is probably a really good idea, is I put some JB Weld, some of this right here. It's the clay-like type of epoxy, and I put it inside, because once you pull off the adhesive tape and this cushion that comes inside of this furniture slider, it's hollow and it's very flimsy. So take the JB Weld, once you mix it really well by rolling it around, and the instructions are on this JB Weld package, but put it all the way around in here to reinforce this piece of plastic. Once you do that, in order to get this rivet to be flush, is while it's still soft, you have to pull up like this and allow the rivet to recess into the JB Weld before it hardens. So that way it should be, if I can get an angle here, it should be perfectly flush and recess, just like the original here, which has a lot of grease on it. It's flush across the top. Alright, so otherwise what will happen is, as this slides through, and I'll turn it over here just so you can see what happens. It goes like this. When these are inside the track and the window rolls up, by this is down, and then as the scissor motion, as these two come together, the window goes up. So in other words, as these come together, this end, that side goes that way. As these come together inside of the track, what happens is the rivet that I just showed you can get lodged inside of this hole right here, which has no purpose at all on the Discovery 2. Maybe on another model, but that rivet gets lodged in there and your window will not roll up after you do all of this work. Now there's one thing that I forgot to mention. If you can see that there's a little space right here. Okay, once you have your furniture slider, you have to take this right here as one of your Dremel tools, and you have to hollow out the inside of the plastic furniture slider. Remember, remove all of the backing. There's a cushion and there's an adhesive backing that originally comes on it. This is meant to go like on the bottom of a desk or something. So the first thing you do, I realize I'm going in reverse order here, but it was necessary to explain some of that other stuff. So you hollow out this, this will actually drill right into it, and you make sure that it is the correct diameter, not of this large rivet here, but of the post that it actually fits on. So there's a post inside here, and I know this is a little bit bright, but there's a post right there that you can see right there where my thumbnail is. That's the diameter that you want. So you take this opening right here before you put, like this is like the step 2 or 3. You hollow out the center so that it fits on the post. You make a slice there with a razor blade. Then you pop it onto the post, and you don't want it to be too loose. Make sure the diameter of your center hole is not too large. Then you put in the JB weld. You lift it up to make sure that it's recessed, that it's not sticking up like that, or it will get caught in that hole on the track that this slides on. It has to be like this one, flush like the factory. The only way to keep this play out of this is that you have to put a collar in there. There's a collar that will slide right in here to keep that from sliding back and forth, to prevent that rivet from getting lodged in that center hole right there, which is what happened to me. The thing, it was working perfectly, but it was getting stuck on that hole, and it's been raining here for about a week solid. Alright, so what you have to do next is, I bought, it's a nylon spacer is what it's called at Home Depot. That's where the furniture sliders came from also. And it was a 4-pack, it was a different brand, but any 1-inch by 1-inch furniture slider that is, has the curved edges like this should work just fine. Okay, so this is a 1/2-inch long nylon spacer. Looks something like this. And I cut a piece of this off like so, that is going to fit down in there to keep the furniture slider from moving back and forth like this. It'll hold it directly in place. And the way that I did that was I took this piece, because it's really tough material, and I sliced off the width that I need to fit in there perfectly. Then I cut a small, you see that gap right there? So I can open this up and slide it down in there. And I just used some needle nose pliers. I just inserted them inside the ring and open up the pliers, and then I'll drop it down inside there. And just to show you a couple of other things that I considered using, this was also a nylon spacer. I used the darker background here, that I was going to cut it in half and use it as a wheel. instead of using the furniture slider, because the slider does not roll back and forth on the track as well as a wheel, but it does work. Another thing I was going to use as a collar or a washer to hold it in place is I was going to use a piece of this rubber hose, slice it off right there. It opens up more easily if I cut it to slip it around the post. So I could have cut that, and it would have been easier to make than the collar right here. But one thing that I would also recommend, if you can do this, this is the wheel. Put it on a darker background. This is the wheel that was broken, and I glued this wheel back together so that I could build using the furniture slider and the nylon spacers, so that I could rebuild this wheel, and I could take this in Home Depot and get the correct diameter, etc. This really did help me out a lot. So the pieces of this should be laying down, you know, like inside of your door there. So this really helped me out a lot. Now, one step that I forgot to mention that's really important. After you drill your hole in your furniture slider and you cut with a razor blade so that it will slide around this post, from the back side, just so there's no chemical reaction with the JB Weld, I don't know that there would be, but you never know, is I took this super glue and I glued this together right here after I slipped it onto the post. And you have to pinch it and let it dry. So that was right after I put it on the post. So glue that space there. Then I proceeded with the JB Weld and the other steps that I mentioned a moment ago. Okay. After the JB Weld dries, sand this. You can use your Dremel tool or a piece of sandpaper and go over that just to make sure that there's not that much friction sliding against your track back here. So you don't want that to be uneven. So don't let this dry like bumpy. Make sure that it's smooth and flush so that this is going to last you a long time. Let's see. Another thing, the weakest point of this little piece is going to be that cut that I just mentioned. That cut right there is the weakest part. So what I did is I'm going to have to lay this down here on the ground to show you how this comes together. Now, this is more difficult than probably how it appears on video because I'm working in a kind of cramped space here. Okay, so this wheel, another thing, these come where they're sort of bent together. You can see that it's bent inward to keep the wheel from sliding out. So you have to bend these open with a screwdriver, but make sure that you keep this straight. Be very careful as you bend these open. And I want to show you, just because this can mess up your whole project. I just inserted the screwdriver in there, and I didn't bend up this way. Once I put it in there, I actually supported this frame and I'm gently lifted up like so. Lift it up there and lift it up there, and don't overdo it. You can see that I got them open just enough to where they would both slide in there really easily. So now that slides in there. Okay, that one's in. Now this space, again, this is one-handed, so I'm like using my foot here to hold this in place. Alright, so all I'm trying to demonstrate here, let me scoot this, make some more space. All I'm trying to demonstrate is that once you're ready to slide this in, make sure that the weakest point of your new slider here faces up, because the motion, this scissors motion, goes back and forth this way, and you don't want it pulling in on that space that you had to cut to get it around the post, or that way. And then also you don't want the weight of it pulling down on that space. That it seems to me the least tension is going to be up, because it's supported by this frame. That plastic part is supported by this top frame here, and so I put the weakest point facing up. So I'm going to see if I can do this with one hand and get this in here. But I think you guys get the idea of it if I can't get it to go. Anyway, it does. It slides right in there like so. Let me set this down just for 1 second. Anyway, it's being difficult. It will slide in there. I just had it in there a moment ago. Okay. Let's see. There's a couple more things that you'll need to know that I'll try to add to this video in just a moment, because this really is a little bit more tricky if it's your first time. So this is it. I'll add to it here in just a moment. For now, I'm going to slide that collar on. Okay. So I don't know how well you can see that, but the collar is in there now, and there's where I had to cut it to get it to slide around the post. It's got a little bit of grease on it right now, so I'm going to dry this off with some alcohol, and I'm going to glue that with some super glue. Make sure that it still spins freely even after you glue it, because you don't want it being stationary to the post. There's a possibility you may not need to glue it, but these things tear up so much that I'm just taking every precaution. But you can see now how that rivet, and that's what I'm calling it. This mushroomed post here is recessed in there, just like it is with this one. Okay, so it's time for me to install this, and I'll show you a couple of tricks to how to get this thing out of here too, that are real pain if you haven't tried it. Okay, so earlier on the first part of this video, I had made a collar to fit around a roller that I had made, and right now I have it inside the track, and I'll demonstrate here in just a moment. Let's see if I can get this flipped over. You can see the collar is in place now. I know it looks different because I have it all folded up, but there's the furniture slider, there's the collar that keeps that rivet from sliding back in place so it does not get stuck in that hole once it's sliding. This is something that I do because this thing, when you're trying to work with it, these parts start sliding and unfolding and getting caught all inside the door, kind of like my charger cord is now. But there's all kinds of places that it gets hung, and here's what I did just to make this a little bit more simple is I just put this zip tie right here around it, which once you have it inside the door, it just slides right off. Also, this doesn't seem like much, but this is really, I mean, this made things a lot more simple. I just got a piece of duct tape, held this wire up out of the way. I rolled this up, this weatherproofing, which was down here at the bottom of the door, the plastic. I just pulled it loose and I rolled it up, held that up out of the way, tucked it inside of the door handle right here. At first I had rolled it up and I had it stuffed down in between the window glass and the door frame, and it kept coming out, and I was having to move the window glass, and just a royal pain. Also, I have, just to hold the glass in place, you've probably seen this before, but I just have that held up there right now. But if you do these things, it takes just a minute or so just to get everything out of the way, but you literally can do something that is a pain with one hand. So I'm going to give this a try here and see. So you go up that way and watch these corners, how they try to get caught, and so now it's inside, and believe it or not, this is normally, I mean, a pain for a lot of people. Now notice that here I did leave this one bolt on, which goes right here. So I'm going to lift this up and it is a little tight back in there. But I'm going to lift this up and find my screw. Sometimes it's easier to find it right there in the hole, in that large opening, and then move it up. There it is. Get it through. Slide it in place. There it is. And then you can move this thing around so you can put in your other bolts. Once you've done that, then you untape your window glass and you bring it down, and it attaches to the roller frame. For now, I'm going to leave this zip tie on here and just slide it off when I'm ready. But this point right here screws in right there, and there's another one right there that you can see. So you literally only have you're holding the regulator, where the motor is, right here with these 4 bolts. Then you have these 2 that hold this arm in. And there's only 2 bolts that attach to the bottom of the glass. So I'm gonna pause this and try to get everything in place. But one other note, while you still have this thing where it's maneuverable, because once it gets bolted in place, it gets really hard to maneuver. But you can see right here, see that gold, let's see if I can get it to stay. This right here, that's where your connector goes. This is like the only opportunity you have to put this inside here and connect this tab. And these things make a difference. Knowing these things in advance. That tab right there on top slides onto a little catch right there. And underneath right here is a little protrusion that goes down inside of that slot, that groove. So you know there's only one way that it can go correctly. But you know, you can try it all these other different ways and really it gets frustrating. But this is when you want to put this on. And so I'm going to go ahead, pause this and get that connected. I'll get the window glass, try to get it down to this section here and connect the two bolts, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so I have that connected there, and what I did is I put this screwdriver in place to hold this arm up right here, so that way I could take this hand from this side and I could use my other hand from this side to guide that in place, make sure that it's secure, that snaps down on top there, and also put a little zip tie right here because you don't want it getting over here in the way of the glass. Okay, so a couple more notes that helps out, and now I've got to try to drop the glass. Okay, so this is part 3. What I've done is I had this zip tie holding all of these arms and these tracks together. While those were being held together so they didn't fall and get in the way, I bolted in the section where the motor is first with these 4 bolts. This one was already, I left that in the frame, so when I slid it up inside I was able to hook it and let it hang by this one, and then I was able to put these in. This must not be an original factory regulator because the holes did not exactly line up. I had to bore them out, just this one and that one just a little bit, to get it to fit. So it was in there, but I think the way that these screws were put in was causing it maybe to bind a little bit. So once I got these in, I just left them sort of loose, all of them. Then I put these 2 in because there's an inside track right here, so these 2 bolts were really easy to put in next. What I did was I had the window taped up there, and now I'm sliding the window down so that the screws, you can see this is actually the bottom of the glass right here, the bottom of the glass, and this is that bolt is gonna enter through here and slide over, and the same thing's gonna happen on this side. So what I want to do is I have to pull this track forward with my left hand, just like so. and with my right hand I will push down on the glass gently and get that bolt to pop in right there. So I'm going to pause the video and see if I can get that done. Okay, so I lowered the window down while I gently, not to warp it, pulled this frame forward, and I used the door frame as leverage, but to pull this track this way, and I was able to pop those bolts in from behind. And now you slide this over that way, and you take your I'm using 8mm, and you just tighten these up, both of them. Do the same thing on the other side. As you can see here too, I mean, I greased the track up with some just general purpose grease. A lot of people prefer lithium grease. I just don't have any. I'm thinking that there won't be any kind of chemical reaction with the plastic and cause any problems. I've tested this grease before and it seems like it works fine. So after I get these tightened up, I've already got my electrical harness connected. Then I'll take this loose, pull the weatherproofing plastic down, and you actually, once the plastic is down, you just press it against this. This kind of stays tacky, so you can easily like reattach it. One last thing, these corners were sort of crimped in. You don't really need to do that because this bolt prevents there's the furniture slider, prevents that from getting out. But I went ahead and pushed it in anyway, just a little, just to keep it, like factory. Alright, let's see. So I guess I'll go ahead and bring down this weatherproofing. Okay, so now I have the weatherproofing plastic pulled down, tightened up my bolts, and I'm going to give this window a test drive before I put the door panel back on. There's other videos, good videos, that show how to remove the door panel. It's actually fairly straightforward. It's easy. So the combination of the door panel video, I believe it's British Atlantic. They supply a lot of Land Rover parts. They have a lot of good quality videos, but they have one on removing the door panel, so check that out. And then this is how to rebuild your window without having to purchase a new regulator. But yeah, just make sure you go around this all the way around, just to make sure, and try to keep out as much moisture as possible. And then you'll be in good shape, and you should have a perfectly good working window. Alright, if you like this video, just give it a thumbs up, and maybe I'll make some more. Thanks.